Hey everyone, it's good to see you. My name is D'Angelo and I am the creative lead for Emerald Templars. Bam! Today I'm going to be going over how to actually play the game. The most important page on your character sheet is absolutely going to be this first page because it's going to have all your information on here. So when we play Emerald Templars, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be rolling a D100. Now, simply, you're only going to need the tens digit die. So it'll be like this one, for example. So what's going to happen is you're going to decide when you need to actually roll. So in this example, we're going to say that your Emerald Templar has to hop a fence to get to the object of their desire. So what we're going to do is we're first going to roll our, D100. And in this case, we ended up getting a 2, which would be a 20% essentially. So what we're going to now do is we're going to look for the most relevant attribute and the most relevant skill, and we're going to add them together. So for this character sheet, the most relevant attribute is agility, which will be 10, and the most relevant skill will be nimble, which is 4. So that's a 14 bonus. So instead of a 20%, we get a 34%. Now, as we look over to this character sheet, they do have 2 points in, or 2% rather, in athlete. So that will then turn that 14 into 16%, giving us a 36. So your lore master, game master, in Emerald Templars will have to decide what the difficulty is for this specific check. So because it's a simple fence, we're going to say it probably was a difficulty of 20. There needs to be some effort involved in order to jump over this fence. Not everyone can do it, but sure enough, with a 36%, you 100% were able to do it. So you have, if you get within 10% of what you needed, but didn't quite get there. So for example, in this case, it was 20% that we needed. So if we ended up getting a 10% or 12% or 16%, all that sort of stuff, then what would have happened is that we would have gotten a partial success, meaning that yes, we did fail and we do gain anger, but at the same time, we're going to go ahead and have an easier time next time we do it because we're used to this fence. We've tried to do it once, we understand what we did wrong, and then we get a bonus of a 10% bonus next time we try it. Now, if we were able to get what we needed, for example, we got a 36% for our total. That is a full success because we needed 20. We ended up getting 36, so we're good. We completely succeed. Nothing, goes wrong. We proceed forward. Now, if we were to get 30% more than what we needed, so if we needed 20 and we ended up getting 50, that is an actual critical success. What that means, as far as skill checks go, is that they go overboard. They're able to succeed, no problem at all. Maybe, depending on your lore master, you can reduce some of your anxiety. Now, when it comes to failures, complete failures, that is going to be when the difference between what you got and what you needed is more than 10%. So if we needed 20%, but we ended up getting, double zeros, which is a 0 in Emerald Templar, that is complete failure because it's just way too far, and you would just gain anger stress at that point, which would be about 5 points of anger stress. We can apply this as well to trying to lift up a crate that's really, really heavy. Once again, we're going to go ahead and look at our character sheet. And we're going to look to strength, which is 4. And then we're going to go to hench, which is 2. So that's going to be 6% of a bonus. And then, of course, we have athlete. So we'll go ahead and add that as well. So that'll be 8%. So rolling our D100, this time we got 10. So we get an 18%. And we're going to say, in order to lift this crate filled of sort of swords, helping out a blacksmith, trying to help, move them, it's probably going to be a 30% that we needed. So in this case, it would be a complete failure. So that's unfortunate. We would gain a little bit of anger, or anxiety, whichever feels, relevant, whether it's be like everyone laughs as they fail, or they just feel so frustrated with themselves that they, feel like they should have been able to do this, that they get anger stress. Moving over to trade skills, we kind of saw what we did, with those 2 examples as an athlete. So if you have a trade skill, you can apply it to your role that you're doing now. So for example, we're always going to have by default an attribute and a skill. Now, if we have a trade skill, we're also going to bundle that in as well. So for the next area is actually combat. So combat will work in a very similar way. So for example, this character has on them a short bow and a katar. So the short bow is obviously a ranged weapon, and a katar is a very close range weapon. So in combat, what'll happen is that, as always, we're going to roll our D100. Let's say this one is a simple skeleton. There's a skeleton that is coming towards them, a group of them maybe, but there's one particular one that is going straight after this character, and they need to deal with it. So what you're going to do is, again, you're going to roll your D100, and that's going to be a 7 or a 70%. So that's an awesome, roll. So the defense for the skeleton, we're going to say as a lore master, it would probably be maybe 30%. So in this case, they already succeeded, and not only that, but they're going to get a critical success, which is a perfect teachable moment. But for now, what we're going to do is, if they're actually going to use their guitar, they can either use their strength, which is 4, or their agility, which is 10. Now, as your lore master, you can go ahead and determine what is more relevant, so maybe a guitar is a more of a finesse weapon. That way you can actually go and, dip and duck and dodge, or the guitar is just being used to just straight up stab someone as hard as possible with a sort of punch motion with raw strength. I could go either way. So in this case, agility is obviously the one that we want to go with, so that'll be 10. And then we're going to look to our fight, which is 0. So that means we're going to have a bonus of 10. Now, in this case, Tradeskills would not apply here at all. And none of the Tradeskills will help out for combat. So it's just going to be your either fight or focus when you're going to use an ability like spellcasting, prayer, ritual, all that sort of stuff. Otherwise, if it's like a martial attack with a short bow or a guitar, that would be your fight skill. So in this case, we got 70 on our die, and we got 10 on our actual agility bonus. So that is an 80%. That is massive. So what would happen at this point is we look actually to the details of this character sheet, and we see that their guitar does 1d6 physical damage. Now, on a critical success, this weapon causes the target to gain bleeding condition for 2 turns. So there's a couple things here. Number one, this is a skeleton, so it doesn't quite bleed. So that doesn't help us out in the situation, which is fine, because if it was any other creature, it would absolutely be able to help out with those 2 turns of bleeding. Now, because the guy was a critical success, it's going to be double dice damage. So it has 1d6 normally, so therefore it's going to be 2d6. And this applies for various weapons. So even if it's already like 6, a weapon that has 2d6 where it's double damage dice, it'll be 4d6. Whatever it is, you're going to double it. So in this case, we take our 2d6, and then we're going to go ahead and just roll it. And that ends up being 8. So they do 8 points of damage now, with their guitar and everything. So what happens in this case is that they're going to go ahead and deal that 8 damage, but they also gain 3 stress from exhaustion stress, because everything you do in Emerald Templars is going to cost you stress, because if you swing your sword over and over and over again, eventually you're going to get tired. If you continue to cast spells over and over again, eventually your mind is going to just melt, essentially. So that is how we're going to represent this. So now that they've taken a little bit of stress, so for example, their exhaustion is 55 as a total. So that means they're going to have 3 of 55. So that's a good amount. They could continue to fight as much as they want to, essentially, before they actually get tired. So that's awesome. So in combat, there are 3 phases. There is your movement phase, there is your primary action, and your secondary action. So in the situation, let's say the skeleton's already upon them. In this situation, they don't need to move because they're already exactly where they want to. So you can actually sacrifice your turn to be able to, or sacrifice that movement action to be able to do another primary action if you'd like to attack twice. So if we attack twice, we're going to go ahead and the player announces it. I'm going to sacrifice movement. I'm going to go ahead and attack again. Cool. Go ahead and roll. So in this case, it was a double 0. So that's really unfortunate. And once again, that means 0. So going back to what our, everything was before, it will actually then be 10 that they're going to have for their bonus, which will be 10%. We needed 30% to hit them. This is a complete failure, unfortunately. So that's going to suck. And what's going to happen is they're going to take the 3 stress for the exhaustion stress for trying, and then they're going to take 5 anger stress from actually failing, completely. Okay, so let's go over vices. So let's say you're in a situation similar to the one we had before, but maybe a little bit better. Let's say you had a situation where you needed to get 30% to hit the skeleton, but the player only got to 28%. So close, but not quite there yet. If they leave it be and it be a partial success in combat, that's going to mean half damage. So they still contribute, but it's not as much as they wanted to or could have done. So instead, there's a thing you can do, which is to use one of your vices. So your vice is going to be on the lower part of your character sheet, and you're going to see that there's different bonuses in each of them. So one of them is actually your greed vice, and in this case, they have 8 greed here. So it could be a situation, and you could work with your lore master to justify this in whatever sort of way, shape, or form. But we could say that oh man, there's a lot of treasure behind them, or there's a lot of like stuff on them, and they need to get to that treasure before everyone else. So therefore, they kind of justify be like, I'm going to use my 8 greed. Okay, so let's with this. Let's see, we add that bonus of 8. So they had 28 and they needed 2% to get to 30. But if we go ahead and use this greed vice, that's going to push us all the way from 28 to 36, which will 100% be a full success, which is great. So what that means is that they do get to succeed fully in their attack and they get to do full damage. But at the same time, whatever they have in their stress, so for example, again, it was 8 greed, they're going to take that in stress. Now, usually, actually always, it's going to be emotional stress. So it could be an anger or it could be anxiety, whichever the case might be. In this situation, with an example, maybe there's treasure around and this character wants to get there. They're a thief and a highwayman, so that kind of fits the bill. If they want to try to get to the treasure or goodies before their party members do, then they could use their greed vice, which would give them that bonus. But then they also get that 8 points in anxiety because they're so stressed out that like, I need to get there first. I need to get there first. So one other aspect I want to mention are the randomized tables. So whether you are a magi casting spells or a priest, praying to your god for assistance, or simply a highwayman thief that is trying their best to survive through shooting afar, at an overwhelming amount of enemies. These are tables that can come in to help you or hinder you in different ways. So every player, including the lore master, has access to them. So in combat, if a player or a lore master ends up getting a 94% or higher on their roll, then they activate this table. In this case, let's say it's go ahead and continue with this one, with Besma, this highway thief. So if she's using her short bow and she's like, taking down targets left and right, and she ends up getting a 94% or higher on her martial attack, then she's going to unlock the valor table. And then she'll go ahead and do her normal attack as normal, get that advantage of that critical sort of success, be able to add that in there, apply everything. And after everything is said and done, that is when they're going to go ahead and add that sort of valor table. So in the book, there'll be a section where it has these tables, and you're simply going to go and you're going to roll on them and see what happens. Now, these can be situations for the martial table, for example. It's a little bit more forgiving than the other tables, but they could be able to like shine their blade into the eyes of their enemy and makes them grant them a stun condition, or be able to hit with such force in this the correct area that they deal additional damage or cause massive amounts of bleeding or whatever the case might be. So again, for the lore master, you also have access to this table. Now you can choose not to use it if you feel like it's too overpowered or whatever the case might be, but they do things like, they can summon more reinforcements. They can go ahead and provide potions to certain like creatures that you have. That way they can heal themselves during combat, just like these characters can as well. And so on and so forth, giving you a little bit of an edge and allowing you to celebrate in your own way when you get a critical success. This has been awesome. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the video or the comments down below. And I will be working on more videos to help out, players navigate their way through Emerald Templars. And yeah, thank you again.